Once upon a time, you would choose your profession upon leaving school, and that would be it for the next 45 years. Reinventing oneself was reserved for celebrities or those lucky enough to inherit a trust fund. Fortunately, this is no longer the case, and there are endless opportunities for us all to choose our own paths. When is it the right time to consider reinventing yourself, and how can you do it successfully? We're going to discuss that and more right now. Hi, you're listening to The Fight Coach, the psychotherapist, and the gym mama. FCPGM is a weekly podcast where we discuss important topics that affect you and your family and tips we suggest that might just help you out. On today's episode, we're looking at how possible it is to turn your own life upside down. Is it beneficial, detrimental, or just another symptom of what's now referred to as the new normal? I'm joined, of course, by James White of API Clinics, a psychotherapist well versed in the world of mental health, stress management, and anxiety.
How's it going?
Mireille Griffin, aka the Gym Mama, a parent of 3, an owner-manager of a busy martial arts and fitness gym, and a lifelong martial artist.
Hi there.
My name is Liam Griffin. I'm a professional MMA coach and an e-learning developer with an engineering background. If you'd like to follow along with us using our show notes, you can get them at www.fcpgm.com. There you'll find links to our Facebook community page, our Twitter feed, our Discord server, and if you'd like to join the conversation, add your experience and feedback, we'd love to hear from you. So, let's begin.
Speaking of reinventing, what do you think of the new podcast studio? It's reinvented.
Reinvented with even more buttons.
And wires.
And all the wires. We have the wires under control now, to be fair. All the wires are hidden. But yeah. So today we're talking about reinvention and reinventing oneself. And I suppose, Jimmy, do you want to start us off with what's the meaning of reinventing oneself?
So this was a challenge to find out actually what it meant or who defined it or what the definition was. So I couldn't find anywhere on Wikipedia or in the dictionary. It gives you a definition for a reinvention or reinvent, but when you put the two words together, there isn't any clarification. But the Macmillan Dictionary has come up with something which is to change the way that you behave or the things that you do so that people think of you as a different kind of person. Now, I have my own definition of it, from obviously my training and experience and stuff. And how I'd like to look at it is, and I'm talking now from a personal perspective, is enhancing the you that you already are. There you go.
All right.
Put
Hold
that
on,
in
we
your
have-
pipe and smoke it.
Oh my god, therapeutic.
All right, so we talked, or we were kind of trying to figure out at the start before we started recording, what is it that we were going to talk about in terms of reinvention. And the thing we said we'd kind of go on to next is the types of reinvention. What are the different types that people can reinvent themselves at any point in their life? So,
Well, I suppose your career, at any point, people change careers now. And, before, like you got a job and it was a job for life, where now people actually change jobs. And sometimes that becomes a part where they're reinventing themselves because they may take a job totally different from what they would have started off with doing.
Yeah, there was a guy on the radio today, I listened to the Niall Boylan show, the on Classic Hits, and the wife had wrote in and said, I need some help. My husband listens to your radio station, and we were talking the other night, and he said he wasn't happy with his job. He was in a bank. He's a banker, right? So good job, good money, whatever. But he's decided now that he wasn't happy in his job, and for the last couple of months, especially obviously with the lockdown and stuff, he decided he loves gardening. So now he wants to hand in a month's notice, right, and become a self-employed landscape gardener. And she was going, help.
Well, isn't that a bit kind of like a deja vu for me? Because when you think about you Like when I met you first, there you were, and you were managing.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
kind of your you know, you were a project manager managing these Sierra projects and all the rest with the SB and Sky and all these kind of things, and then you decided, I think I give up and I go to college.
Well, now it took me 2 years to give
did,
up. Like, do you know
but
what I
we
mean?
didn't say there was a time frame on.
But yeah, I wasn't.
But I mean, you did.
I wasn't
like,
happy.
and-
I wasn't happy in my job. No,
yeah,
not at all.
exactly. Like, so I mean, you probably could feel your man's pain.
Oh,
really,
absolutely,
like,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and you know, and now with your experience, you'd probably say go for it.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
and don't wait 2 years. Do it now.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose it really that's something that we'll get onto a little bit later on, as well as how to do it successfully and not to do it haphazardly. But just touching on another type of reinvention, when we talk about companies and you know, corporations and airlines and all these different types of business ventures, rebranding is a type of reinvention.
And again, we probably have experience of that because, like, when we opened first, we were K2C, and then we joined SPG, and there was a little bit of apprehension as to whether we wanted to lose that K2C name, but it was it did a reinvent the wheel for us, like.
Or even we're going to do my website at Christmas, so that's sort of rebranding again, isn't it?
Rebranding.
Reinventing, yeah.
Well, so the one that sticks out for me the most is I don't know, maybe some of our listeners or viewers will remember the brand of Lucozade. And like when I was growing up, I when I was very young, I had a few different operations in hospital, and I only remember Lucozade being a glass bottle that was wrapped in orange plastic, and you only got it when you were like dying.
And it tasted better.
Well, that's up for debate, but I mean, at what point did it become like an athlete's sports drink? Like, that was a complete and utter out of left field reinvention, and it was a successful reinvention because now you don't have to wait for someone to die to buy your drink. So, but yeah, so that's branding. Any other major branding examples that you can think of, maybe? Any company out there that, or anybody that's listening, if you want to comment, I'm going to try and pick up some comments in the feeds, either YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching. Comment away, and we'll try and get your input into the show if we can.
Do you know the one that the household one was Jif? When did that become Sif?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Or Marathon Bar. Do you remember Marathon Bar is now their Snickers?
Yeah.
I did put in the S there, yeah.
Well, I was working in the BFS in Blarney at the time when Jif became Sif.
Yeah.
And my job was to stack all the shelves and make sure all the stickers were right on the shelves. And when somebody printed out all the labels, they had Sif on them, and I actually scratched them all out and wrote Jif on them because I hadn't heard that they were rebranding.
Rebranding, yeah.
So the whole shelf was full of brand new Sif product with like penciled out and Jif written back on top.
Oh my god!
I single-handedly reversed the reinvention of the
transition.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talk about image then as well, like people change their image, like, you know, and at this point now I'm going to give a shout out to Laura, because she's been walking the roads there every Sunday morning listening to us, and only for her I wouldn't be reinventing my hair. She comes and she says, there, the scissors, your hair is getting cut, and that's the end of it. But you know, kind of the hairdressers are always helping people reinvent themselves, because they go in there and, well, probably I'm not that person, because I go in there and say, all right, I'm going to get something different, and I always come out the same, because I can't.
Well, it's different than when you went in.
Well, yeah, but it's not different. I didn't reinvent myself, like. Although I know that Sharon, my friend, always says, God almighty, if you look at all the photographs over the years, I have a different hairstyle every couple of years, but maybe in my old age I'm getting a little bit, you know, less adventurous.
Well, I remember when you were when you had your operation on your ear a few years back. After that, you had a phase where you looked like your one Ricky Lake.
That's right.
A lot of people won't remember Ricky Lake now, but she was the other one that didn't become famous when Oprah became famous. But,
Yeah.
We should have it. We should have those photographs ready to go on screen, but we don't anyway.
Yeah, I have the video of. I was only looking at it the other day because I was showing it actually to Aisling and telling her that you said I looked like Ricky Lake, and then I had to bring up a photograph of Ricky Lake to show her.
You also have now, when you're talking about reinventing, people moving or emigrating.
Yeah.
That will be another one, wouldn't it? Starting a new life somewhere else.
Yep.
Up
No,
the sticks.
Like me.
Do you know you could fit into all of these now, Jimmy?
Yeah, we'll just do a show on Jimmy instead. We'll put you on
Talk to
screen.
someone
There's
about all this.
branding and there's career, there's the image, there's the location.
And then I suppose you have then changing yourself personally. So, not that you become a different person, but you work on yourself, hopefully for the better, I suppose.
I
You know
suppose
what
a better version of
I mean? A
yourself.
better version of yourself, yeah.
Yeah.
Enhancing the you that you already are.
Oh, really? That sounds good.
So I'm just reading some comments there that are coming through on the Facebook feed just as we're live. And from Paul O'D, he says that it's imperative for people to consider reinvention during today's climate. With so many big industries struggling at the moment, should people use this as an opportunity to follow their dreams?
And
Very
I think
true.
we were talking about that earlier on, weren't we? That there's another Facebook group now about buying local off local people, and people who had different jobs for whatever reason and have lost them in this COVID stuff have tapped into their creative side and are now doing some sort of creativity, whether it be baking or wood making or painting or whatever. But they're coming up with all these different ideas to try and, I suppose, reinvent themselves, isn't it, for the moment?
Well, during lockdown and because of the pandemic, people didn't have a choice. I know that David McWilliams does
But
a
they're
great
coming up with
show
all these
on.
different ideas to try and, I suppose, reinvent themselves, isn't it, for the moment?
During lockdown and because of the pandemic, people didn't have a choice. I know that David McWilliams does
But
a
they're
great
coming up with
show
all these
on.
different ideas to try and, I suppose, reinvent themselves, isn't it, for the moment?
During lockdown and because of the
think,
pandemic,
there's a
people
bit of
didn't have
deja vu
choice.
going on here.
I know that David McWilliams does a
But they're
great
coming up with
show
all these
on.
different ideas.
Oh, hang on. I know what it is. Go on, sorry.
I was saying, I was going to give out to Jimmy. I thought he was talking over me. I was going to give it.
Never.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, but even during lockdown, David McWilliams, who does a good podcast, and he was actually doing, interviewing people who had reinvented their own business because of lockdown, because they, even at the moment, a takeaway pint, so that's reinvention, isn't it? Somebody
Yeah.
getting
Definitely stepping outside the box anyway.
yeah,
Outside the box, isn't it?
could we ever think that should be kind of, that become a thing that you could get a takeaway pint?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a weird one, and the idea of people standing outside their favorite pub while the pub is closed, the doors are closed, the windows are locked up, and everything. And it is definitely have you got something better to be doing? Drink. Like in a park or at home with friends and family. Don't be standing on the street
Put on a raincoat and drink in the park.
But that's what they're doing. That is. I mean, I know it's a takeaway point, but these are not even pubs that are serving takeaway points. These are pubs that are locked, closed, doors,
and it's kind
shutters,
of
everything.
Almost going with the pint and reminiscing and pretending that you're inside.
Yep.
What it used to be like to have it in the pub. But they're putting up those, them marquee tents things. They're putting them up outside some of the pubs on the smaller streets. And the lads are getting their takeaway points, and they're all then underneath the shelter having their points.
Yeah. There's been loads of people who have reinvented themselves very, very successfully over the time. Like I went through, people who just did a huge U-turn on what they were originally doing. Like the guy called Jeff Benzo, he was a computer science, doing computer science on Wall Street. Really doing very well in financial firms. And then he just launched Amazon. Just changed tack.
Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did I say?
Jeff Benzo.
There's been, some people have had no choice then, because when you think of, what was that one, Martha Stewart, she had to reinvent herself. That she found, she used to do modelling, And when the job started drying up, she went into Wall Street, and then didn't she go do a stint in jail? So now she's actually kind of doing creative work with cooking. So she reinvented herself and then reinvented herself over the time, you know.
Yep.
Anna Schwarzenegger
Yeah, I suppose like
originated as a bodybuilder, then went into acting, and then became governor of California or something, was it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
Ronald Reagan. I mean, he was an actor and then reinvented himself as a president.
Yeah, let's not go down the president route now, 'cause it's not- I'm not in the mood for that conversation today.
Yeah.
But there's one that I kind of know a bit about this, but you would know a bit more about it than this. But one of the people most famous for reinventing herself is Madonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So apparently there were 7 phases of her reinvention, and I have the links to this particular article in the show notes for anybody who's listening. You can click on the links and get to this article and read it for yourself a little bit more in depth. But so the new girl in town was the first phase. So her single "Everybody" was the first one in 1982. So you remember that single obviously.
That's why he was saying we'd remember more. Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, 82, I was literally just starting to walk at that stage. So,
Your mum and dad were going around whopping to her all like,
Yeah, I love rock and roll.
that was a different song now. The Hollywood glamour phase, and this was when she released the single "Material Girl." So she went from being kind of like a kind of like wearing tracksuits and kind of street kind of wear that we would associate with hip hop now. That was her first phase. The second phase then was the kind of the glamour,
Marilyn Monroe type of.
exactly. Yeah. So that was her second phase. Then she came out with a bra that had 2 cones in it. That was a phase all by itself, apparently.
that was just a Madonna phase. Is it?
Well, that's called her blonde ambition phase.
Right.
Then you have the Mistress Diva or Mistress Dita. Apparently she went into kind of like an erotica phase where she was kind of all whips and chains and stuff. And her single that time was called Erotica. Okay. Then you had the Ray of Light phase where she became a bit of a hipster. Started doing a lot of yoga and I don't know, doing stuff like that. Then she was the American Girl. She had a remake of Don McLean's American Pie. A few hits kind of based on American nostalgia, and then she became a disco diva after that. I kind of vaguely remember most of those phases, but I wouldn't have been a massive Madonna fan, but certainly like she's held up well over the years. Like,
yeah, like there's great credit due to her for her, you know.
She did. She had an impact in the music era. Do you know what I mean?
she was relevant like from the 80s right up until the 2000s, the noughties, which is like over a 40-year period for any musician to stay relevant. That's an achievement in itself, and that is the key to staying successful in the music industry is reinvention.
But sure, they all did it.
Tom
Bowie.
Jones.
Well,
David Bowie did it.
Well, the other person that's very successful at it musical wise is Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was very, very famous, and then he, right at the height of his career, he decides to change his whole profile and goes on to an electric guitar, and everybody was kind of going, "Oh my God! Like what is that? Like, do you know what I mean? That he's doing so well, and he's changing his tack and changing music because he was kind of revolutionary, but that was the reason he became so prominent for so long. Change, like that reinvention, at a time when he could have been tempted to stay there, and he's a great advocate. He actually writes about people should reinvent themselves. You should avoid the plateau. You should, not worry about success, but worry about kind of being the best person you can be. And he's very much a great advocate for it.
See, enhancing the you that you already are.
So the Paulo D on the chat there, he's the only one talking to us. I don't know, is there anybody else actually watching or listening? But he's after falling off his chair at your pronunciation of Jeff Bezos anyway. He's wrote it down phonetically and all for you. Jeff Menzos.
Well, do you know what? No, that's great now, Paul, because at least that's a bit of exercise that you got having to get back on that chair. Because you better be in here next week training.
So I talked about, what we want to talk about the benefits and why it is important to reinvent yourself. Well, we kind of touched on it a little bit there with regards to company branding, moving with the times, and musicians and people in public life having to reinvent themselves. Very, very important. But why would it be important for a personal individual to maybe consider reinventing themselves from time to time? Are there any benefits of it? And in particular, would there be like mental health benefits to reinventing yourself?
So, yeah. Again, I think if you think of the metaphor, when you think about water that's just sitting there, becomes stagnant. I can't remember the exact wording of it, but you know that if it's not moving, if it's not flowing, it just gets stale. And it's the same for our brains. So neurologically, there's evidence provided that shows our brain is made up of what's called neural pathways, and when we sort of stop learning, stop reading, stop gaining knowledge, stop now we're not talking about doing Sudoku and crosswords and stuff like that, but other stuff where you're not actively using your brain for stuff to sort of push it and keep it moving, keep it flowing, that it's not good for us in many different ways. I was watching a TED Talk earlier on, which I actually forgot to put in the show notes, but it was a study done on Alzheimer's, and they're providing evidence that if you stop upgrading and learning and keeping your knowledge developing, you're not building new neural pathways. And the whole thing about whatever deficiencies that happen in the brain that's attributed to memory loss and Alzheimer's is counteracted if you keep them neural pathways built. So then we're talking about what's called neuroplasticity, which is obviously the new area of science of the brain. And this is where they're talking about, say, and we've talked about it before, how mindfulness can be beneficial. Again, it's all going to come down to affecting in a beneficial way any stress, any anxiety, depression, all of those mental emotions and feelings and challenges that we have, if you can keep the brain active and moving now in a beneficial way. So this isn't like, you know, sitting up all night now trying to come up with the next Tesla car or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? It's in beneficial ways. It does create time and space for self-care, but even doing that, you're creating these new neural pathways. So 100% is a physical and mental benefit to it.
I think as well that you know, there are stages in our life that we do need to reinvent ourselves anyway, just to get on. You know, we'll say you're only in school for a certain amount of time, so you're that person. Then you reinvent yourself. You go to college and you go on to work. You become a parent. Do you know what I mean? That there's different stages in our lives, and that we're a different. You know, naturally we're a different person. You go from being, in my case, a daughter to a mother, and in time to a grandmother. Do you know what I mean? It's you know. So we're all.
Wait, did I miss something there?
Yeah, no. I said in time. No.
I don't know whether Nicole's aware of this now or not.
In time, and plenty of time. I'm too young to be a grandmother. Actually, you're a granddad. What are you talking about?
I look good to be granddad.
But you know, it's sometimes, you know, your confidence grows as well, because when you're a certain age, you think you can't do something, and then as your confidence grows, that's the reinvention, maybe to go back and look at things that maybe you thought you couldn't do, and I'm going to try them now.
But that is the thing, isn't it? How many times, well, I don't know whether you've done it or not, but I've done it numerous times, not recently obviously, but you've asked that question, what if? Or I should have.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there was those, even though you're saying that you grow from being, say, a school to an adult to a parent and so on, there's still things psychologically inside you that stop you doing whatever it is. Dreaming, I suppose. You know, if you were to probably ask some of my relations, they probably said I was the biggest dreamer in the family, like, to a degree. But I never really chased them, sort of, as such. Do you know what I mean? Maybe one, but obviously since I've met you and stuff, I've chased quite a few of them. Do you know what I mean? But they're all gone in the same direction. But I didn't have the confidence, or I didn't have the self-belief, or the self-esteem even to try and do some of these things. So you carry some of that stuff with you, even though you're going through them stages, and that's where you probably have to work on changing yourself personally.
Yeah, and it's kind of maybe the opportunities come. You have to kind of grab these opportunities that come along, because I think that sometimes we reach a place that we think, yeah, that was what I dreamt of doing, and that's what I want to achieve, and then suddenly you get there, and it either it's over in a second, and you think about the next one, or you get there and it's not really actually making you as happy or as contented as you thought it might be. And it's okay to kind of say, either sometimes this isn't really for me and I'm just going to change, or yeah, I've achieved this now, but I think I have more to give. I always say to myself, like, tell everybody I'm going to live till I'm 119, because there's so many books, there's so many things I want to do, and I won't have time unless I live till then. And that's to look at all the stupid programs on TV as well, because when I can't get out of bed, I just want somebody to give me, put me into bed, put on the TV for me, and let me finish out a couple of years doing that too is fine. But I think it's great. I have great admiration for people who do actually have the confidence and the adventure to just change. It's not working, let's go.
So you were talking about, you touched on two things there. Number one was a book, and number two was, number two, you talked about being much, much older, and maybe there's times when it's too late to change. So the question is, when is it too late to change? And I think you have an answer to this question with one of the books that you want to talk about today.
Yeah, because, that was what was exciting about reading and researching for this. It actually is never, ever too late to change. Never. And I came across an amazing woman. Her name is Anna Mary Robertson.
Robertson, yeah.
Yeah, she's known as Grandma Moses, and she has the most incredible life, because when she was 12, she was a maid in a house, and that until she was married, and the person that she was working for kind of noticed that she kind of liked paintings and things like that, so they kind of buy her paints as presents and that. Then she got married, and she ended up working on a farm. And she didn't come back to her love of painting until she was 78. And she ended up being a multimillionaire because of it. One of her paintings sold in 1964 or something for $1.2 million.
That's a lot of money in 1964.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that, like, and just saying, wow, like, I mean, and she was 78. She lived till she was 101. So that's why I'm impressed too, because that's, my ambition is get over that line. But she, that it was just incredible, like, that somebody could reinvent themselves at such a late stage of their lives and be so successful.
So the book that you're talking about there, I'm just going to flash it up on screen for anybody who's watching, and the links to this book will be in the show notes, of course, for anybody that's listening on Spotify. You can check it out there. But the book is called what?
Grandma Moses, My Life's History. And I would highly recommend it, because I think the inspiration of knowing, going through this person's life, and I'm sure, like, her life on the farm was very, very hard. And, like, at 78, you imagine after a real tough life that she would sit down next to a knit maybe or whatever. And she went off and she followed her dream. And I think that, anybody, for any reason, this book is going to be an incredible read. So I would highly recommend it. Now,
I tried looking up for, this is not in print anymore, so you're buying second-hand versions of this book, and a lot of them are kind of hardbacks and stuff like that, so they're quite valuable. There's one or two of them that are signed copies as well, and they're very valuable. So
Yeah, so if anybody has one, it's definitely an investment, if nothing else. Like, because I think one of the books is selling at about $159. You know, it's a first edition, and I think she has it signed. I mean, but that's incredible. I think anybody at all that would, there must be. How do you describe it? That, like, even to kind of you get inspiration from the paper cut of the book nearly, because I just think that's really, really exciting.
That was worth about just under 9 million now. That
the 1.2 million in 1964. Yeah.
And
I might do a few sketches myself, see if I can sell it.
And when you talk about it's never too late to change, so there's an article again in the FCPGM notes, which is a psychological study which is about reinventing your identity, turning back time and hacking your biology. And a Harvard psychologist called Ellen Langer I wonder if she's from Cork. In 1978, she conducted a study, and what she did was she gave a load of houseplants to two different groups of nursing home residents. And for one of the groups, what she did was she told them that they were responsible to keep the plant alive, yeah, and she gave them a daily schedule in what to do and how to do it. And then the second group were told that the staff would care for the plant, and they weren't given any schedule. Okay, so after 18 months of this, of looking after these plants or not looking after them, as the case may be, twice as many people in the first group who were actually given the schedule were still alive as in the other group. And then what she did was she wanted to conduct a study and take it even further to look at, say, the mind's impact on the body. So we've talked about this before, how there's a mind-body connection. So in 1981, she took a group of graduate students and they designed the interior of a building to look like the styles and conditions of 1959. So effectively, she made a whole street of 1959 houses and whatever. And they had all the old black and white TVs, the furniture, the magazines, and the books from the 1950s. And what she'd done was she took a group of 8 men who were all over 70 years of age for 5 days, and they were instructed that while they were in the building, from the minute that they arrived, they shouldn't discuss anything else past that era while they were there, okay? And they were to act as if they were the younger selves, so they were act as if they were 22 years previous, back in 1959, living in 1959, and talking about everything that went on in 1959 for them. So the findings at the end of it wasn't about people living in the past, but it was about to trigger how the body and the mental energies and biological responses to each individual person would be relating to their younger self as such. And how it would affect them biologically and stuff like that. So there was people that arrived in with canes, couldn't lift all their stuff up the stairs to wherever their bedrooms was, but they weren't given any help. They were just told, take it one at a time, get it up there. So you had to do it yourself. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the period of time, people who arrived using canes and who were dependent on other people, like their children and stuff like that, in their normal daily lives, actually left the building on their own power, carrying their own suitcases with no sticks and no canes. So it was as if that they were after being able to function as a younger self, which then provides the mind-body connection, do you know what I mean? And how you think of yourself. So you know that I'm 50 or I'm 60, but I actually feel 40. And then going out and being that 40-year-old or living that 40-year-old lifestyle, you know?
I suppose it kind of maybe points to the idea that maybe retirement is the opposite of reinvention. When somebody retires and they kind of let go and they just lose all purpose or you know, just basically they're just hanging around waiting to die.
So it's like water being stagnant, isn't it? It's just sitting in it.
Maybe instead of retiring, everybody who is at retirement age should be seriously looking at reinventing themselves for a brand new start.
Change it to, instead of retirement party, a reinvention party.
Reinvention party, yeah, exactly, yeah.
I think that would be a good idea. I think that would mean, it's based on science.
And again, when you were looking and do research on it, I come up with this reinvention for when you're 30s, reinvention when you're 40s, reinvention when you're over 60s, and reinvention for your 70s. So there's loads of tools out there and the reasons why it's beneficial, which is mentally and physically, you know.
Okay, so we're kind of moseying on along here. You have a book, Jimmy, that you were going to recommend. I think it was just a book on how to reinvent yourself. Is that the?
Oh yeah, so there's a book I came across on research, which is from a guy called James Altucher.
Your turn out to get it. All right, Paul O'D, how did he do there?
At least he wasn't posting drugs through Amazon. So it was released in 2016, and effectively what the book is about is he's sharing techniques on how to, you know, reevaluate yourself, readjust your approach to life and business if it's business that you're looking for, and how to continue moving forward, being successful in whatever way that is, whether it's playing golf or whether it's gardening or whether it's in business itself. And it's specifically for people who, you know, maybe professionals that feel that they're unfulfilled and want to start a new career, but maybe are afraid to begin. It's for self-starters who maybe want to learn how to master these skills of moving forward. And it's for anybody who's aspiring to be an entrepreneur and maybe are afraid to try and do anything because they haven't got the money or stuff like that, and it gives them all strategies and stuff like that. And then the second book was Emotional Intelligence, which we covered before, by Daniel Goleman, which is about self-awareness and understanding your emotions, understanding your feelings, understanding your thoughts, and how you can evaluate yourself and learn from this information, and I suppose put plans into action of how you can do things more beneficially for yourself rather than struggling.
So, and just as we're mentioning those books as well, guys, for anybody that's watching in or listening in, the reason that we recommend books is because they kind of, like in our research for any of these episodes, we want to try and get a kind of a pulse on what's being pushed in the literature. And these are the books that we've come across that we actually do recommend that anybody would get benefit from reading them. And the other part of this as well is that the links that we put in the show notes are affiliate links. So it doesn't cost you anything extra to buy the book using those links, but the FCPGM podcast gets a small commission on those, and that helps us to pay for the website hosting and everything that we need to do to keep the podcast going. So it is a very, very good way of supporting the podcast if you are enjoying the podcast. If you're not, well then bugger off. But if you are, this is a good way of supporting the podcast. So all affiliate links are in the show notes and on our website, fcpgm.com as well. So there you go. So a bunch of books. Now, Mara, you have a book in front of you there.
I have.
So what's going on with that?
This is Michael Harding's book. It's On Tuesday, I'm a Buddhist. Okay, so what it is we announced quite recently that as part of the podcast, as part of the Gym Mamas tribe, that I was starting a book club. So we put up a poll on the community page, and I put 2 books up at the time, and of course I want to read every book because I love reading. So the book that was chosen that won the poll was On Tuesday, I'm a Buddhist. So for the 1st of December, I'm inviting everybody to join me to read this book. It's not too long. It's actually a nice book. It's like the reviews on it are talking about it being really funny and honest. So it's a nice book to get started. I'm really looking forward to reading it. So what I have is I actually have 8 copies in front of us here. I have 1 at home for me, and I've got 8 copies here in front. And I'm thinking to start us off that we were going to run a competition. So for that, what we're going to get you to do is those that are listening here to the podcast, if you could give us a 5-star rating on our the Apple Apple podcast.
The Apple podcast store, yeah.
Yeah, so on the Apple podcast story, if you could go to our podcast and give us a 5-star rating, that's number 1. Then what I need you to do is I need you to copy that and put it on your social media, tagging us here on the podcast, tag myself, James and Liam, and the actual podcast. And I am going to give 8 books out to the first 8 people that can do that for me. So you can have this book free of charge as a prize for helping us out, getting our rating up. And I'm really, really excited for people to join me to read the book and discuss it, because that's what's lovely about books. When you read, you have knowledge of things, you get really, you get great information there. And then what's even better is when you can discuss that, because people read and people look at things, and all of us have been blessed with having our own free will and our own, kind of way of understanding or taking that information in and processing it. And it's lovely to chat and see people's view and kind of expand. So it opens the door for conversation, which is really, really important. So I'd absolutely love if you would join me for my Gym Mama's book club. Try and win these books here with me first, and then if you're not lucky enough, you can buy them using our affiliate link on the show notes, but we'll put that up again.
All right, so just getting back on track with regards to today's episode, then we have a couple of comments coming in on the Facebook page. So from Kevin O'Sullivan, I think it's essential to always be open to reinventing yourself when in business, as it is possible to end up wearing blinkers in pursuit of a goal, in particular, in a particular way, or using some set of formulas as the only way forward. Being open to the possibility for change gives you a different view of things and frees you up more to more ways to succeed and find a new direction forward for your goals. And Kevin is, for those of you who are fans of the podcast and have been listening before, Kevin is one of our former guests on the podcast. Who he was on the one about dying, which was probably the most exciting podcast we had. Well, it definitely wasn't exciting, but. But he talked about during that podcast, one of the things that he realized after having a brush with death is that he lost his fear for change, and reinventing himself was a huge part of that. And he's gone from working in mad amounts of different factories over the years to becoming a full-time martial arts coach, and now opening up his own tattoo studio as well. So yeah, thanks a million for that, Kevin. Good insights. I'm still kind of trying to get to some of the comments, guys. So if you are commenting, comment away, and we'll try and get to them. But the next part that we do want to talk about is there any time that is wrong to reinvent yourself? So I actually have I think that sometimes somebody reinventing themselves may be running away from a situation and like throwing everything out and changing your life just to get away from something that you don't sort out. It's not going to sort that problem, and the problems will follow you into your new adventure or your whatever reinvention you've come up for yourself. So I would posit that that's the wrong time to reinvent yourself. To escape something else, that's the wrong time. Do it because something else excites you, or you're ready for a change, but not when you're in the middle of a court case, or
getting a ticketing.
Like you can't reinvent yourself when you're in prison. It's the wrong time to do it. Maybe when you come out of prison or whatever. But what do you reckon about that?
Witness protection. No, yeah, I agree. If you're running away or avoiding situations, definitely it's not a good time, because again, when you come back to looking into any of the tools or tips or suggestions from a psychological point of view and a mental health point of view of about reinventing yourself, it all comes down to self-awareness. So it's accepting who you are at that stage and looking for what is it you're looking for, or what is it you want to go towards. And we'll come to some of the stuff in the tips in a few minutes. So definitely self-awareness is probably step number one anyway, do you know what I mean, when you're talking about it. So it is about self-awareness, like, and not running away from things, dealing and managing things that you have to deal with, and not avoiding them. So I'd agree.
Okay.
Well, if you don't, I kind of if you go at that time, what you find is that maybe the reason that you were reinventing yourself because you have a problem, it means that you weren't successful. So if you don't actually sort that reason for not being successful out, or what didn't work, then it's very hard to reinvent yourself successfully.
Well, that's the danger, is that like people can give up on what they're working on right now. Just literally give up before it's time to give up, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe like you can't reinvent yourself every week, you know, just because something is not working out. I'm going to reinvent myself. It's like there's only a few times in life where you can declare bankruptcy and not be a muppet, like, you know. It's like, you know, this is something that, like, if you're going to reinvent yourself. Don't make it an excuse for flopping out on something. That's the only thing I would say. Like, is there a wrong time to do it? Ask yourself, are you really reinventing yourself, or are you running away from something else?
Is it for the right reason?
For the right reasons.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that kind of probably comes back to a few other things that we've talked about before, resolutions and other podcast episodes that we've done. We've talked about, like, make sure it's for the right things and analyze it first.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready for tips, are we?
Yeah.
Let's go.
So tip number one is self-awareness. Who are you? Discover your strengths. Learn from any perceived weaknesses, which shouldn't be looked at as weaknesses, but as in information to help you grow stronger. So just figuring out who you are and being aware, as you said, of, is it something you're running away from, or what is it that you truly want, and start there.
Number 2 is, what is your why? Step outside your comfort zone with courage. And again, courage, like, is comes up again and again in our podcasts as well. And it's, you know, it's kind of, I suppose, if you want to reinvent yourself, you need to know what is it that you want to achieve. Why do you want to achieve it? What is the why? What is the end goal? And so then that you can reinvent yourself, or, you know, go back to education. There's no point in deciding, oh, I'm going back to college and I'm going to do some degree, but it has no end goal. Then that's not reinventing yourself. You need to have a reason for doing it.
So the third tip is to set SMART goals, and this comes back to our episode on resolutions. So SMART goals are the types of goals that are specific, measurable. I always forget the A, but anyway, there's time sensitive in there, and there's achievable, and there's anyway, yeah, there's a few things, right? So look up what SMART goal means. It's not an FCPGM concept. This is a kind of a well-known concept, SMART goal. But it's at the heart of any change you're going to make, whether it's a resolution or whether it's going to be a reinvention. Hold on, Jimmy's after rescuing me here now. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant. That's what the R stands for. Relevant and time bound. Okay, so it's important that you have those things laid out within your plan to reinvent yourself. Number 4.
Definitely be realistic and in line with your values. So try things out, you know, so you know, there's no point in saying, oh my goodness, I'm going to be an astronaut. And, you know, that's not, again, we did a podcast on making reasonable real goals that are, you know,
Realistic,
yeah. So so it's really important to be realistic about the changes, and you know, because if you think out the changes, then again, be reinventing yourself is going to be successful.
Number 5.
So considering others too, obviously, considering those around you, and if it's going to have an impact, and what way you can manage that impact, so it doesn't become a negative, selfish for self, but rather a consideration for other people, as well as being selfish in a positive way for yourself. And then having a support group, so like-minded people who are into maybe the same sort of scenario that you're into, and using those like-minded people to support yourself, maybe buddying up in groups with them or something like that, and looking for those who have previous experience in it and learning from them and bouncing stuff off them ideas, and using their knowledge and their training and their experience to help you get to where you need to get to. Number 6.
It's all about self-compassion. This is literally at the end of all our tips that we do. We're always encouraging people, okay, you can push yourself outside your boundaries, go try something new, give yourself a good lash at it, but you have to be willing to forgive yourself for lapses and setbacks and you know, off days and things like that, and plan for them. Plan for setbacks and plan for the days where you're not as motivated, you know, so that you can expect it, not be shocked by it, and then get back on track as soon as possible. Number 7.
Number 7 is take steps to begin and start now. So again, that's about making a plan. So you actually, you know, you don't just decide on a Monday morning, I'm going to change everything. What?
I'm handing in my notes.
It's handing in my notes like that. That you have to have, like we'll say, a reasonable plan and steps in place. So we often talk about, you know, the atomic habits, about having, you know, the small term, the short term, the medium term, and the long term plan. So it's kind of stacking up the habits, stacking up all the ideas to get to this new place. It's not just like going into the hairdresser and saying, look, I need a new hairdo. It's not, you know, reinventing yourself takes more than that. It takes to have, you know, like we said in the whole tips there, it's about having the right team around you. It's about considering others. It's just about having it all organized so that it can, again, you can achieve it successfully.
Okay, so one thing, so let's just recap those one more time. So Jim, you wrote them down, so do you want to do the recap?
Okay, so tip number 1, self-awareness. Tip number 2, what is your why? Step number 3, set goals, smart goals. Tip number 4, be realistic and in line with your own values. Step number 5 is consideration for others as well. Number 6, self-compassion, being kind to yourself. And number 7, take steps to begin.
And on that, I'm going to actually recommend something that I think that anybody who's listening right now, if you get the itch to reinvent yourself after listening to today's podcast, I'm going to recommend a website I wish I knew was there a couple of years ago. I'm just going to put it on screen there altogether. So this is springboardcourses.ie. So for anybody that's in Ireland listening, this is an amazing platform, kind of partially government funded, where anybody who's if you're unemployed, or if you're currently employed, if you're an undergraduate, or if you haven't even done we say leaving cert or junior cert, there's courses here that will help you to upskill, reskill, get back into the workforce, change your qualifications. And because they're partly subsidized, you're talking about getting, like, you can get like degree courses like for maybe 800 quid, you know, whereas normally something like that would probably cost, you know, in the region. Well, when I did my master's, it was what it was like
about
6 or 8,000 for over the 2 years, and the same course is actually on springboard.ie for 800 quid.
Really?
Yeah. So I wish I knew about it a couple of years ago.
Has there a PhD on there?
It doesn't. No, there's no PhDs on there, unfortunately. But there's certainly masters there. There's MBAs. There's business courses. There are manufacturing courses, engineering, philosophy. Literally everything. There's hundreds of courses on there. And just go ahead and check it out, guys. Springboardcourses.ie. And if you're looking to reinvent yourself, 100%, it's a great place to start. And you can do that right now. Go do that now after listening to the podcast, and that will be tip number 7, taking steps to begin and start right now. And that's a good place to start.
And I think the other thing to mention is that some of the stuff that we've covered on the podcast today, when we've mentioned, say, the likes of, say, self-care and support and resilience and stuff like that, and courage, they're covered in other podcasts that we've already done in more detail. So if you want more information on them and, self-care and self-awareness, go back through the podcast that we have, and we've covered them in a little bit more detail for you as well.
Just looking out there as well, I just got a lovely message from Laura. She's thrilled with the shout out. She's watching us live. She's actually put EastEnders on the back burner until we're finished. So she's enjoying it and she's thrilled with the shout out. And Laura, we love you, sure.
Oh, you need a haircut, actually.
So hold on there now. I'm a little bit out of sorts here. Now, Mara, you're going to be doing your Gym Mama's quote there in a second. So do you want to start queuing that up?
Yeah, I have it ready there for you.
Sorry, no. Okay, go for it.
So today's quote is very applicable to to what we're chatting about, and it goes like, just as established products and brands need updating to stay alive and vibrant, you periodically need to refresh or rejuvenate yourself. And that's from a lovely lady called Mireille Guiliano.
I don't know, is that Mayor Giuliano? I don't know, is that Rudy Giuliani in disguise there, because he's reinvented himself a few times.
You see his hair, the dye running down his face the other day from the sweating and all.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's gone off the deep end. I suppose if you lie down with dogs, you come up with fleas, don't you?
That's right, yeah.
So do you want to just read that one more time there, because I wasn't really paying attention? Go
Oh my
go again.
goodness, that's not good at all. Just as established products and brands need updating to stay alive and vibrant, you periodically need to refresh or rejuvenate yourself.
Awesome, excellent. So I don't know, I think we're after doing our best now to kind of give everyone a kick in the arse to reinvent themselves. In the year that's in it, 2020 can't get any worse. So what have you got to lose?
Exactly, and we're just waiting now on Micheál Martin to come out and tell us we're definitely out of this lockdown 5. So anybody at all who wants to rejuvenate and reinvent themselves and take on a martial art, our doors are open on December 1st. So please come along to us.
Okay, so we'll wrap it up for today. So let's do the whip around. So Jimmy, where are people going to find you if they want to get in touch?
So you can find me on www.apiclinics.com.
Mar?
You'll find me on all social media backgrounds with platforms as Marlene Griffin SPG, on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. But the best place to find me actually is always at reception, especially from the 1st of December. At reception at North Point Business Park at SPG, where I am always there. Hugs, chats, cuppas, and get in there and meet me.
Okay, if you want to get in touch with me, guys, it's Liam OG Griffin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And don't forget FCPGM.com for everything to do with this podcast, back catalogue of episodes, show notes, links, all the stuff that we talk about in every episode. And don't forget Marlene's competition. So if you want to win a book, what are the 2 things they need to do again? 5-star review on Apple Podcast.
Yeah.
And
share it onto their social media platform, tagging us.
Yeah. And
the first 8 are going to get a free book from me.
Awesome. Okay, so we will leave it at that for this week, guys. So Make sure you keep on commenting. Let us know if anything has inspired you today, and if you're going to make a change to reinvent yourself, give us a kind of a shout. Let's see, or let us know what that is, and we can be your accountability partner moving forwards, and we can make sure you do it. So until next week, guys, this has been FCPGM, the fight coach, the psychotherapist, and the gym mama. Until next week, take care of yourselves.